Hello everyone, today we will talk about Fyodor Dostoevsky, one of the greatest Christian writers of all time, and not only Christian writers but of literature in general. Not only literature but philosophy and ideas. So, why does this matter? Why speak of Dostoevsky? And well, Dostoevsky is one of the greatest writers in world history. It's not only that, but is also regarded as the father of existentialism and psychology. He was even able to predict the future of Russia in the 20th century. He was an important thinker regarding the death of God, with his solution being love. So, but first, before to understand his ideas, his thought, and we have to understand his life. Who was Dostoevsky? Well, Dostoevsky was born in a wealthy family, along with seven siblings, unfortunately losing his mother during his adolescence, which led to an increase in his father's irritable personality. His father was violent and prone to anger with the children and servants. Because of this, when Dostoevsky turned 18, his father was tortured and killed by a group of peasants. These early experiences, along with the emergence of socialist ideas, led Fyodor to join a revolutionary socialist groups. Now, in 1849 he was arrested and sentenced to death for this very reason. However, God had plans for Dostoevsky, and his death sentence was cancelled just when he was about to die. Instead he was exiled to engage in forced labor in Siberia, camp concentration camps, forced labor. Now, during this period, he began to suffer from epilepsy, which would accompany him throughout his life. He had his first contact with the Bible and the teachings of Christ, and he was released in 1854. And of course, this touch with the Bible and Christ defined his thinking. Now, once released in 1857, he married Maria Dmitrievna and lived for many years in great poverty, mainly due to his gambling addiction, barely surviving on the money he earned from his novels, and his wife died in 64. Later, he married Anna Snitkina in 1867, and during this period he wrote his greatest works. And from 1879 to 1880, while suffering from illness and pains, he dedicated himself to write his best novel, a novel that would save Russia, according to himself. This novel was The Brothers Karamazov, and he died in 1881 due to a lung hemorrhage. Now, regarding his thinking, well, his thinking is, of course, in this period of time when scholastics, where Aristotelianism is disregarded, is taken away, and it starts to appear all those modern ideas, the appearance of modernity, the ideas of liberalism, capitalism, and eventually the appearance of socialism and communism. So, of course, Dostoevsky won't be a thinker like Thomas Aquinas. He won't do scholastics. He won't do metaphysics. He will be an existentialist thinker, meaning someone that is more focused with the problems of the human life, with this rejection of the previous ideas that built the West, those ideas that what were the grounding for society, for politics, for everything. Those ideas were starting to be disregarded, to be rejected, and all those new ideas like materialism, the idea that only matter exists, that human beings have no free will, that maybe morality is only subjective, is not something real in the world. In the appearance of all of those ideas, he begins this Christian existentialism, which is the idea that man has to live through faith. He has to believe in God, he has to believe in goodness, in beauty, in right and wrong by faith. It's not only the intellectual grounding behind that, but the exercise of man's power of will to believe in those ideas. And in that way, he can surpass, he can surprise, I don't know how to say it, but he can defeat suffering, nihilism, and the feeling of existential emptiness. This idea that life has no meaning. No, that man can overcome that through faith. And and later on will appear the atheist existentialism, with thinkers like Camus, like Sartre, like Beauvoir, who they have this strange idea that existence precedes essence, that man is completely free, he has absolute freedom, he can and man builds himself, he constructs himself. For example, Simone de Beauvoir says that women are not born. They are not something in the world, in an essence, but it's a construction. It is an idea. So gender is not anymore this essentialist view of gender, but more of a construction, something more nominal rather than real. And of course, I don't know much of those thinkers, so I won't speak of them now. Regarding the works and the novels of Dostoevsky, my favorite and the best one, in my opinion, is all the novels of Dostoevsky are great, so it's hard to find a better one. But the novel of Crime and Punishment is one of the most famous ones that he has. Now, what is Crime and Punishment about? Well, it's about a law student, Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov. He commits a murder and he redeems himself. He overcomes his guilt through his suffering, through understanding that he is responsible for what he did. And the novel is primarily a response to the ideas of Nietzsche, of a very important atheist philosopher that will appear later on in history, later a bit after Dostoevsky's death will appear Nietzsche with his ideas, and this is very interesting because Dostoevsky is already answering his ideas before him. Now, of course, in the themes of the novel, we can find this idea that suffering redeems human beings, that suffering is useful to understand our guilt, to understand our pain, to not only that, but to also feel compassion for others. This idea of the Übermensch, of the Superman, of the Overman of Nietzsche, versus the idea of love in Dostoevsky, is also this distinction between cold rationality and faith. Dostoevsky overcomes this idea of materialism, that life has no meaning through faith, that life has no meaning through faith. We can overcome that. And of course, the harm of materialism and how this idea can actually destroy society. And this is represented in Raskolnikov. Now, let us read a bit of the novel right now. It says here. Now, suddenly he bent down quickly and falling to the floor, kissed her foot, and Sonia moved away from him as if she were facing a madman. And indeed, he seemed like a madman. "What are you doing to me?" she whispered. Pale, and a sudden anguish ripped her heart. He stood up instantly. "I didn't bow down to you. I bowed down to all the suffering of humanity." Now, this idea is very present in Crime and Punishment. This respect for the pain and the suffering of humanity. What is the context here? Well, Sonia was a prostitute. Why was she a prostitute? She prostituted herself for her family because her father was a madman, was an alcoholic, and her mother, I think that she was crazy, if I'm not mistaken, but she had like a mental problem. And this woman, Sonia, he sacrifices everything that she has to be a prostitute, and to be able to protect her family, to give them money. So she sacrifices herself completely for her family to do the right thing, despite that society sees her as a disgusting woman, as a bad woman. She is completely a good person. She forgives everyone. She's a good woman, and yet she is despised. Raskolnikov, despite being an atheist, he bows down to her, and not only to her, but to the suffering of humanity. And this is evident in the idea of Jesus. Now, the novel of the idiot. Prince Mishkin is a Christian soul, is someone without hatred, without resentment, without enemies, like in Vinland Saga. Someone with no enemies. Someone who is filled by love and innocence. And the novel mainly focuses on how the world reacts to him and how he reacts to the world. And there is this love triangle between him, between Rogoshin and Anastasia, who was a woman that was groomed by a man, and she's hated, she's despised by society by being a bad woman because she was groomed. She's not a virgin anymore, and in this society in the 180s, it was a very hard thing for you to not be a virgin woman and to have those extramarital relationships. So of course, in that context, Mishkin, he loves her and he tries to marry her, not because he feels lost, no, it's because he feels her suffering and he tries to help her. He sees her as a victim of everything that happened. And besides Mishkin, there is also this other guy that is Ragoshin. And Ragoshin is a man, is a criminal, and he beats her, he despises her, he's a bad man. However, he's also this other romantic possibility for Anastasia. Now, of course, so the whole idea of the novel is who will Anastasia accept, Mishkin or Ragoshin? If she accepts Mishkin, she accepts life, she accepts that she can change, that she can redeem herself, that love can save us. If she doesn't accept that but accepts Ragoshin, she is accepting that she won't accept her blame, she won't accept her suffering because of her pride, and he won't allow herself to love because of pride. And by doing that, she loves death. And so that is the whole topic of the novel, is if Nastasia will choose Mishkin or Ragoshin. And Anastasia is also a representative of us. We have to choose between life or death, between letting go our pride or choosing our pride. Now, relationship with Nietzsche. Nietzsche describes Dostoevsky as the only psychologist from whom I have learned something. Now, what is the big distinction between Nietzsche and Dostoevsky? Well, they both face this death of God, this idea that God is no longer any necessary for society, that we can disregard of God, that we can disregard of free will, of morality, of all those ideas that built the West. Now, Nietzsche, what will Nietzsche say? Well, he will postulate the Übermensch, that men can create their own values, that man has not to reject life and endorse cynicism, endorse nihilism, and this idea that nothing matters and let us just die. No, he will say that we have to love life. We have to love our passions. We have to love our rationality. We have to love the world. We do not have to give up on resentment, on hatred. No, we have to carry on. That was the whole idea of Nietzsche. Not only that, but Nietzsche will be uh, he will very much despise Christianity because he will regard Christianity as this nihilism, as this idea that, oh, I cannot handle the pain in the world, I cannot handle the suffering in the world, and therefore I will believe that there is free will, that we are responsible, I will believe that God will endorse justice, I will believe that good men will be recompensated and bad men will be judged, and all those ideas, Nietzsche will disregard them as illusions, as nihilistic illusions, as the illusions, the ideas of resented men, of weak men, that they cannot handle the reality of the world, that everything is permissible, that everything is allowed, and everything is utterly meaningless. That is the point of view of Nietzsche. Dostoevsky is the Christian view. It's no. It's the idea that things do actually have meaning, that we have free will, that we can love, that we have to do the right thing and not the wrong thing, that we have to let go of our pride and love others and dedicate ourselves to others and to desire justice but not resentment. And that is the whole idea. Nietzsche presents the Übermensch. He says, let's accept the nihilism and carry on. But Dostoevsky will say, no, we do not have to accept that nihilism. We have to have faith. Faith in love, in justice, in goodness, and in the idea that life is meaningful and that every single man is made in the image of God and therefore he is valuable. And we cannot accept this nihilism. That is the big fight between the two. And who won? What happened at the end of the life of Nietzsche? This is something very interesting. At the end of his life, he embraced a horse that was being beaten by his master, and and he asked forgiveness on the behalf of humanity. And that was very strange because Nietzsche is this anti-Christian, this guy that hates mercy, that hates compassion. However, he did a thing, and this is very interesting because in Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov does the same thing as Nietzsche. And of course, in that period of time, Nietzsche was very crazy because he suffered from syphilis. So, what happened there? Did Nietzsche repent of his atheism, of his idea of the Übermensch? Did he accept love? Did he become an idiot in the sense of Dostoevsky, in the sense of let us uh, let us overcome reason by faith, let us overcome this idea that everything is meaningless by faith? Did he accept that? Or who knows? And that is something that in the end nobody really knows, but maybe he did or maybe not. Now, so let us understand more this idea of the idiot, of this man that despite having the evidence that everything is meaningless, he still wants to accept that life has meaning. Let us hear in the words of Dostoevsky itself. I want to say to you about myself that I am a child of this age, a child of unfaith and skepticism, and probably shall remain so to the end of my life. How dreadfully has it tormented me, this longing for faith, which is all the stronger for the proofs I have against it. And yet, God gives me something moments of perfect peace. In such moments, I love and believe that I am loved. In such moments, I have formulated my creed, wherein all is clear and holy to me. This creed is extremely simple. Here it is. I believe that there is nothing lovelier, deeper, more sympathetic, more rational, more manly, and more perfect than the Savior. And I say to myself with jealous love that not only is there no one else like him, but that there could be no one else. I would even say more, if anyone could prove me that Christ is outside the truth, and if the truth really did exclude Christ, I should prefer to stay with Christ and not with the truth. And I am the same person as Dostoevsky, and that is why I am not a philosopher nor a Thomist in actuality. Now, Demons, this other novel. Demons is another novel of Dostoevsky that I really like because it's a prediction. The entire novel is a prediction of the 20th century. It's about how in a town starts to appear these socialist and anarchic ideas, these ideas of moral relativism, and inspired by Stravogrin, who is like a Ubermensch figure. This guy that he has his own values, that he does whatever he wants. This Nietzschean Ubermensch. And of course, everything goes to shit. The socialists take control of the town, and a lot of disasters happened, just like it happened with Russia. So, of course, the novel is a prediction of the future, and this idea that without God, then everything is permitted. Now, the Brothers Karamazov. This is the magnum opus of Dostoevsky, his last work, and he pretended this novel to be about the fate of Russia, that people will choose the path of the hero of the novel and not of the villain. Sadly, that did not happen. They chose the path of the villain because we know what happened in Russia. Now, the death of the father symbolizes the decline of Christianity, and the father has three children: Ivan, Alyosha, and Dmitry Karamazov. Now, Ivan is this materialist, is this rationalist, in a way a nihilist, because is this completely rational guy who cannot have faith, who cannot accept Christianity, because all of those ideas of materialism and communism, they are anti-Christian by nature. Alyosha, he's the Christian, he's the idiot, he's not someone who rules himself by reason, but by faith, by love, by by faith and love. And then you have Dimitri, who is a hedonist, who is a passionate guy, and those are the three brothers. Now, the themes of the novel is the problem of evil, of free will, and the fate of Russia. That is mainly the topics. And of course, Dimitri, the rationalist guy, he's also the one who says that if God does not exist, then everything is permissible. Because if we disregard all those ideas of free will, of meaning, of morality, if we disregard all of that and we accept materialism, the idea that only matter exists, then there is no more morality, there is no more judgment, and life becomes impossible because nothing matters anymore. And of course, Nietzsche also knew about those things, and he did not only realize the problem with morality, but also the problem with science. Let us hear him. Let us hear him. Our faith in science is still based on a metaphysical faith. Even we, knowers of today, we godless anti-metaphysicians, still take our fire from the blaze set alight by a faith thousands of years old, that faith of the Christians, which was also Plato's faith, that God is truth, that truth is divine. But what if precisely this becomes more and more unbelievable, when nothing any longer turns out to be divine except for error, blindness, and lies? And what if God Himself turned out to be our oldest lie? At this point, we need to stop and take time to reflect, because science itself now needs a justification. Notes from the underground. This is the confessions of a cynical and a depressed man, a nihilist, who feels disconnected from society. Along with philosophical reflections, it's one of Dostoevsky's most important psychological works. This novel is a critique of socialism, of positivism, of materialism, of, of all those utopian ideas of the socialists, that we can rule society in communism, that the state can direct society, that man can be understood like a machine, that there is no longer free will, and that we can build paradise on earth. Of course, this novel says, "Oh, come on, guys, that is bullshit. That is not going to go well." And now in the 21st century, we know that that went like shit. Of course. It's also a prediction of atheist and existentialism, because the protagonist feels all those problems of existentialism, this problem of emptiness, of loneliness, of existential anguish. All of those ideas is like a prediction of Sartre and all of those guys. And of course, free will is a very big important idea here. Let us hear, this of the same novel. Shower upon him every earthly blessing, drown him in a sea of happiness, so that nothing but bubbles of bliss can be seen on the surface. Give him economic prosperity, such that he should have nothing else to do but to sleep, It creates embeds himself with the continuation of the species. And even then, out of sheer ingratitude, sheer spite, man would play out some nasty trick, he would even risk his cage and would delightedly desire the most fatal ravage, the most uneconomical absurdity, simply to introduce into all this positive good sense his fatal fantastic element. It is just his fantastic dreams, his vulgar folly, that he will desire to retain simply in order to prove to himself, as though that were so necessary, that men still are men and not the keys of a piano. Even if man really were nothing but a piano key, even if this were proved to him by natural science, e- and mathematics, even then he would not become reasonable, but would purposefully do something perverse out of simple ingratitude, simply to gain his point. And if he does not find means, he will contrive destruction and chaos, will contrive suffering of all sorts, only to gain his point. Good heavens, gentlemen, what sort of free will is left when we become to tabulation and arithmetic? When it will be a case of twice 2 makes 2 makes 4? Twice 2 makes 4 without my will, as if free will meant that. Because if there is no free will, life becomes completely meaningless. Now, The Dream of a Ridiculous Man. This is a book, this is a short story of Dostoevsky. You can read it in an hour, and it's about a man weary of life who plans to commit suicide, but he falls asleep, and in his dream, the meaning of life is revealed to him. Now, I won't talk about this short story because you can read it in an hour, and it's probably the best introduction to Dostoevsky. So, what was the future of the 20th century? Well, the Gulag, the Soviet Union, killed 60 millions of people in only 20 years. 60 million. Pol Pot killed the 20% of its population in Cambodia. In 19, 3,000 Chinese civilians were killed in only 7 weeks. Also, the atomic bomb, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You also have the funny mustache guy, that Australian painter guy. Well, he killed a lot of Jews. So yeah, it was a complete mess in very short. And of course, in South Africa and in South America, it was a mess too. In every single part of the world, the 20th century was a complete nightmare. It was complete garbage. But who would have expected? Who would have expected that if we disregarded the ideas of morality, of free will, of love, of Christianity, everything that built the West, who would have thought that things were going to be bad, that we could have this utopian view of the world, and that everything would be solved through socialism and communism and fascism and totalitarianism? Who thought that those ideas were going to be hell on earth? But they were hell on earth. But let us ignore that and let us hear the words of Zosima of the Brothers Karamazov, who is Dostoevsky speaking to us through him. Love all of creation as a whole, and each of its elements. Love every leaf on the branches, every ray of light, the animals, the plants. By loving things, you will understand the divine mystery of all things. And once you understand, you will enter into this understanding more and more, and you will end up loving the whole world with universal love. And there is only one way to find salvation, to bear the sins of all men. From the moment you answer for everyone and everything, you will see that it is just to act this way, as you are guilty of everyone and everything. On the other hand, If you throw your laziness and weakness onto your fellow men, you will end up giving into satanic pride and murmuring against God. And always remember that you cannot judge anyone, for before judging a criminal, the judge must keep in mind that all that he is as much as a criminal as the accused, and perhaps more guilty of his crime than all. When he has understood this, he can be a judge. It is a great truth, no matter how absurd it may seem. And my fathers, what is hell? I define it as the suffering of not being able to love. And that is the solution, my people. The only solution for all the suffering of the world. Love.